All right, so I want to show you a couple more things about the Wick editor here. First off, I'm going to, in my new project here, I'm going to change my background color to black. I'm going to make a nighttime scene, so I'm going to change it to black, and then I'm going to apply that, and then close this window. Actually, I'm going to name it. While I'm at it, I'm going to call it Night Scene. Apply that, close your window. Always hit that apply button before you close that window. Okay, so this is how you can combine projects. So watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to make a moon. I'm going to take and use quite a light color, same color yellow with the fill and with the stroke, okay? So that they're both the same. And I'm going to use my ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw myself a perfect circle by holding down the shift key. Okay, so this is going to be my moon. All right. Now I want it to be a crescent moon. So how we can do that is we can take another image, put it on top of it, and then we can subtract those two images from each other. So I'm going to make mine a different color so that you can see it, and I'm going to just use a purple one. I'm going to leave the stroke the same color though, so that you can see what happens, how it will blend on it. Okay, so this is going to be a purple moon, and now I'm going to take my ellipse tool and I'm going to draw my crescent like so, and then use your select tool and move it into place so that you can make your crescent shape. Now, if I wanted to, I could, rotate this a little bit so that my moon would, have a little bit more, whichever on the edges, the tops or bottoms, whatever it is. So there's going to be my shape. I'm actually going to take this and move it so that's just a little bit more of a crescent shaped moon, something like that. Now, here's the important part. Take your cursor tool and select both of them at once. Okay, so draw around it so that they are both selected. And then through this drop-down menu right here, we have these three tools. I could unite those, and that would make them joined into one object. I can subtract, which is what I want to do, and that will subtract the top object from the second object. Or I could intersect them where it would have different points then so that they were manipulated in a little bit different way. I want to subtract, so I'm going to choose the subtract tool. And now what's happened is this is just a moon. Okay, so if I select off of it, watch what happens when I select my purple object. I drag it out of the way. I don't need that anymore. Now I can just delete it with your delete key, or you can use your garbage can that's up here. I like using keys. So there, that's how you can make yourself a moon. All right, so what we want to do is we want to start keeping our layers named. So similar to what we've been doing in other programs, we build up our layers so that we can manipulate them separately. If you click on this layer, notice that over here, I can name it. So I'm going to call this layer my moon layer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer through this layer button. Now, when you have more than one layer there, they start to kind of disappear. But if you scroll with your mouse, there's your plus button that you can add more layers. You can also use this scroll bar down here on your timeline. Okay, so this new layer is going to be where I'm going to put a house. And so I'm just going to label this my house layer. Now, you could draw a house in all kinds of different ways. You could use a pen. I wouldn't use a pencil. I would use a brush tool, and you could grab your color of your house and your fill. And I don't want to have let's see, fill color. We'll just go with that. And, you could just draw yourself a rough little house, and it's pretty quick to do this kind of thing. It's kind of cartoonish because, of course, it's hard to draw with a brush like this. You can change your brush size, and you can make it a little bit smaller, and so on and so forth. And you can add your little pieces in there. You could draw yourself a house. So that's one way that you could do a rough little drawing. Another way that you could do it is by building some shapes. And it looks a little more professional, I guess, but it does take a lot longer to do it that way. And so with that, I would, draw myself a square. And then what I would do is I would copy that square because I need to make it into a triangle. So I'm just going to copy, and then Actually, I guess I have to grab it first. So let's grab it. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. And I'm just going to move it up here for a little bit so that I can actually start working with this. So I know that to turn this into a triangle, I would have to first off take that square. I guess it should actually be more squarish. And I would have to cut across on my lines there. So I'm just going to try and get them lined up. I should have made it a square for sure. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to draw a rectangle across it like this. Okay, so it's going to be kind of a wonky little roof. Now, when you are excluding images, something to keep in mind is that whatever image you select first is the one that's going to be subtracted off of. So because I want to cut off my triangle, I want to select my triangle first. Then I'm going to shift click and select my rectangle, go into here, and I'm going to again subtract that. So now my triangle is completely separate. You can see that. I can take this rectangle. I don't need it anymore. I could delete it. And you can go and you can place that there. So I have a house. Now, because I had stroke on those, you can see that there is a roof line on it. You can dress it up with a door, etc. Okay, so I've got a couple of buildings that are here. I'm going to actually take this house. I'm going to leave them both, but I'm going to make this a little skinny house and I'm going to move it over into this area. So I have two houses. There you go. So you can make yourself a little city of skyscrapers or whatever it is that you want to do. Now, notice I have a moon layer. I can turn that off temporarily. That's my moon. And I have a house layer. And you can see if I turn off, there's my house layer. And this is all just on frame 1 right now. So as soon as I go to frame 2, of course, they have disappeared. Now, in the last video, we did frame by frame animation. And so we could do the same thing. I could take that moon and I could copy it and I could paste it to frame 2 and I could move it a little bit and I could paste it to frame 3 and move it a little more and paste it to frame 4 and move it a little more. And I could do that frame by frame by frame by frame by frame. But that is very time consuming and it looks pretty jerky if you don't get your object when you're moving it spaced very evenly from frame to frame. So then it kind of looks, I don't know, jerky, wobbly. So there is another way of animating that are called tweens. And tweens really is the, I guess, more advanced or more correct way of animating where we don't do it frame by frame. So I'm going to show you now how tween animation works. So my moon is sitting here at frame 1. And let's say I wanted my moon to go from this part of the sky over to this part of the sky. And I'm going to get that to happen over a 2-second period of time. So remember, we are making an animation at 12 frames per second. So 2 seconds would be 24 frames. So I'm going to take and expand this moon down, grab your little double-headed arrow. I'm going to expand that down to take up 24 frames worth of time so that over 2 seconds of time, my moon would move. So at this very first frame, you want to select that first frame and we're going to add a tween to it. So you can see that it changes and we've got a dotted line right now because it's broken. That moon is not moving yet. But what if I take my playhead and I go all the way down here to frame 24 and now all I do is I take my moon and I move it where I want my moon to end up. Okay, and so watch now what happens. When I scrub that, you see it starts here and it ends over there and it takes 2 seconds of time. So if I hit my playhead, you'll see that it takes 2 seconds for that moon to move. Now, of course, I do want my house to still exist. So what I have to do is take and make sure that my house is on all of those frames as well. So I would extend that out. The house isn't moving, so I'm not going to add any tween or animation to it at all. And so now if I play it, you see my moon is going from spot to spot. Now, I could have got a little bit fancier on it. And so what I could have done is said, you know what? I want my moon to actually start maybe a little bit lower. So maybe my moon actually is going to start off of screen over here. And then halfway through, so maybe at around frame 12, my moon is going to be higher in the sky. It's going to be up here. And then by frame 24, my moon is going to be off the screen again. So it kind of looks like a sunset. So you can see that what's going to happen now is that it's going to come and go up and go down. And you can add points in between your tweens where you want the direction or even the rotation could change on it. So if I wanted to have my moon kind of rotate as it's coming up and as it's going over, you could have a slight rotation at this point. I'll just demonstrate what that would look like. So my moon would maybe start like this, and as it comes up, notice how it is rotating. And then over here on this frame, I would make sure that my moon is, rotated maybe a little bit like that. So watch what happens here. You see how my moon now is kind of coming up and it's rotating as it's going across ever so slightly. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to fix this, because if you run into these troubles, you'll have to fix it as well. So on my moon layer, it should start here. So I'm going to click that keyframe, and then at my end keyframe is when it should be over here. And on my middle keyframe is when it should be up here. And so now there's my moon and it is working. Now, I hope that you have saved every once in a while so that you're not going to lose your work. As you save things, night scene, it'll always rename it with a new time, I notice on it. So you want to make sure that you're saving that every once in a while so that you've got it. So in my case, I think I'm done with my nice little scene. And remember that this is only a Wick file, so it is only a project file as far as a file that we could open back up and continue working on. To save it out where you are done, you need to export, and we're going to just create that as an animation as a GIF. So we export that out as a GIF. Just wait for it here for a second. It looks like it is. There we go. Night scene. I'm just going to call it done because now I'm finished for sure. Night scene GIF done. Save. And just one thing that you may not know that you can do, but when you have that file, I can take that file on my computer here, and that GIF file, I can take it and I can drag it right up here to a new tab, and then it'll just play. And so you can just see how it will work. Of course, you're going to be putting that onto your website for me in the Photoshop section so that I can mark some kind of a scene. You can make the exact one as me that's very similar with stars, moon, and a couple of buildings.